Hello, my name is Julie, and today I'm here to do again the mid-year book freakout tag. So if you're unfamiliar, this is just a middle of the year reading check-in, talking about the best books of the year and what is to come for the next half of the year. This is one of my favorite videos to watch and to make. If you're interested in finding out about my mid-year stats, that will be coming later in the year, and I'm going to be filming that right after June is over. So look out for that. Get to see the whole tour of my spreadsheet and my superlatives for the year, what my stats look like. The first question is, what is the best book that you've read this year? And somehow, the first book that I read this year was my favorite, and that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is a historical fantasy that is told in the style of a 1800s Bildungsroman about our main character, Robin, who is taken away from his home in China and raised to be part of this society of people at Oxford who use differentiations in translations to change the world around them. And this is a fantasy book that is very anti-colonial and absolutely blew me away. I have not had such an impactful experience with the story of a book, but also the way that a book was written in a while. I knew going into the year that I wanted a 5-star to start off the year, and it seems like I've got my best book already picked out for me. So we'll see if anything else this year can beat it. I also have a second favorite book of the year that I think is, in my mind, it's kind of tied for this, and we'll talk about that in the next question, which is the best sequel you read this year, and this is far and away Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. You can see I actually tabbed up the book, which is something that I don't do very often, and I don't really do it on the first time reading a book. But this is the third book in the Stormlight Archives, which is part of the Cosmere. Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite authors, and this series, from the very beginning of The Way of Kings, is one of my favorites of all time. But I think that this is the best installment yet. In this one, we are following Dalinar and his backstory, and I think the expansion on our characters, the magical world around them, was just top freaking tier. This is another one of those books that it was just the highlight of my day to come back to. All of these tabs are quotes that I really liked, important moments that I thought I'd want to come back to, and possible foreshadowing. So I cannot wait to read Rhythm of War soon, but I think that I have like 2 other Sanderson books that I might pick up before that. Question 3 is a new release you want to get to but haven't yet. And I've got a couple answers for this question, limiting it to books that I own, but one of them is right here, and that is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This has been, I feel like it's been a love it or hate it sort of thriller, because I've been told it gets a little crazy, but this is about a writing retreat competition of a bunch of writers who go to an isolated cabin, and they have a month to write a book, and whoever writes the best book gets a huge deal. And I know that there is like a bunch of drama between these characters, and something about this just screams favorite thriller to me, so I'm really hoping it does. The other ones that I'm really looking forward to, the second book for the year of Sanderson, I have not gotten my copy yet, so when I get that, I would love to read that. That one is about a person who just shows up in medieval England for what is like a futuristic vacation package, and all of the instructions that he's been given have just gone away. And then also A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon, which is a prequel or another book in the Priory of the Orange Tree series. I loved Priory, and I just ordered my copy of this. So this is very chunky, epic fantasy with dragons and just a bunch of different countries and perspectives that I really thought was super impressive. And then Happy Place by Emily Henry. I've got my copy at my mom's house. I just got this for my birthday, and this is about a couple who are going on vacation with their friend group, but they actually broke up 6 months ago and haven't told their friends about it, so they're fake still together. Which I think that this is the chance for Emily Henry to finally get a full 5 stars. People We Meet on Vacation is one of my favorites, almost a 5-star, but I want her to get a full 5. Question 4 is, what are your most anticipated releases for the rest of the year? I have a few, but number 1, my most anticipated read is Rouge by Mona Awad. She wrote Bunny, which is my favorite book of all time, and also All's Well, which is another one of my favorites. This is about Belle, who inherited an obsession with her skin from her mother, who just died under suspicious circumstances, and now Belle is finding out more about the spa cult that her mom was in. I don't know, but Mona Awad has not failed me yet, and I think that this one's gonna be fantastic. And I also am pretty sure that I'm going to be getting an ARC in the mail soon. I'm so excited. Okay, then a couple other ones that I'm excited for. Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. This is her 3rd thriller. This is about a small town librarian when in this small town skulls start appearing and body parts start appearing in this swamp, and she thinks it has something to do with a local legend of this creature called the Long Man. Of her premises, this is the one that's least grabbed me, but I super trust her. Then we have 2 fantasy books that are actually inspired by the same historical figure, and they are both conclusions to duologies, and that is Heavenly Tyrant by Xiran J. Zhao. This is the sequel to Iron Widow, which is like Pacific Rim and a couple animes mixed with Chinese mythology, so it's in this sci-fi fantasy world where aliens are attacking and humanity's answer to that are these giant mechs. A young man and a young woman will pilot them and to kill the aliens, but when this happens, the boy's chi always overpowers the girls and the girl dies, and our main character Zetian, her sister was just one of those girls who was conscripted to die, essentially, so she is out for revenge. This audiobook just absolutely blew me away. It was a total surprise favorite of last year. I loved the characters, I loved the world building and all of the conversations about gender. Absolutely fantastic. Cannot wait for this book. And then its twin, He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. This is the sequel and conclusion to She Who Became the Sun. I actually have an ARC of this that I'm very excited and will be reading early. In the first book, Zhu is from a poor family in China. Her brother is prophesized for greatness, and she is prophesized to achieve nothingness. And when her whole family dies, she assumes her brother's identity and goes to the monastery where he was promised a spot and just starts collecting power, both political and magical. And this is such a thought-provoking fantasy that I really loved last summer. Both of these series, the main character is based on Wu Zetian, who is China's only female emperor, which is super fascinating that these came out at the same time. The sequels are coming out at the same time. They're both duologies. I love them both. Question number 5 is your biggest disappointment of the year. I have 2 answers for this. I have a 3-star, so it was a letdown from like higher stars, and then a just bad book. The 3-star, I gave 3 stars to The Blood Mirror by Brent Weeks after really enjoying the last several books. This is the 4th book in the Lightbringer series. It is a magic system that has to do with the color spectrum, so different people can see colors, and that allows them to create a physical material called Luxin, and there is a one person a generation can draft every single color on the light spectrum, and that is the prism, and they are like the leader slash Jesus figure of the culture, and that is one of our main characters. The last books have had plot twists and action that I thought drove the pace really well. I really like the buildup of our characters, but in this one, I didn't think that there was as much going on. One of our characters has been imprisoned for 2 books straight, and I just didn't love this as much. I thought the conversations were boring, there wasn't as much action, and it all seems like it's just lead up to book 5, which I have also heard not very good reviews of. So this was a little bit of a letdown. But my biggest letdown was A Crown of Ivy and Glass by Claire Legrand. You know, I don't always have the best track record with ARCs on NetGalley, but I have had a good track record with Claire Legrand. I liked Sawkill Girls. I liked the first Furyborn book quite a bit. But this one promises to be a Regency fantasy and fails on every single point. The Regency part, it doesn't feel Regency except they're in ball gowns. The fantasy part is not very well defined. Everything feels very Deus Ex Machina. The main character is infuriating. The love interest doesn't really make any sense to be a love interest, and just every single part of this I did not like. I didn't have as many expectations as liking it as The Blood Mirror, but it still disappointed me quite a bit, as you can tell. Question number 6 is your biggest surprise. So almost every single book that I've given like a 4.5 or a 5 star, I've been able to predict. I knew going in that this was going to be a highly rated book. But there were 2 that did surprise me that they made it on there. One of them is A Memory Called Empire, which is a sci-fi about a space station who has ambassadors sent to this empire that is trying to conquer the whole galaxy. And our main character, her predecessor ambassador, was killed under suspicious circumstances, and she's now having to figure out what happened to him while trying to dodge several bullets herself. I don't know what I expected from this, but this was surprisingly fun. I think it did have some intellectual bits, but I just had a lot of fun with the maneuvering in this book and our characters just trying to survive. And the other one is one of my favorite books I read this year. I didn't think that I would love it nearly as much as I did, and that is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tun. This is a book inspired by the myth of Chang'e, the moon goddess. This is about her daughter who is not supposed to exist, has hidden from the world, and when people start thinking that she exists, she has to flee from her mother who is imprisoned in the moon, and she ends up as a maid, but then she runs into the prince and becomes his study buddy, and then she's alongside royalty, but she's not one of them, and she becomes an excellent archer, and it's here. It is Circe meets Mulan. It takes place over a long period of time. We see many phases of Xinyan, the main character's life, and it just stunned me. The writing style, the characters, the fantasy world, literally everything about this was jaw-dropping to me, and I didn't expect to actually like it that much. I don't know why. It came highly recommended, and I didn't believe it for some reason, and I'm so glad that I did end up reading it. Question number 7 is, who are your new favorite authors? If you're talking about authors that I read for the first time, Su Lin Tun is the one that comes to mind. If you're talking about authors that are being added to my favorite of all time, no author that I've read this year has newly qualified yet for the list, but I do anticipate that Mona Awad and Ashley Winstead will be making the list before the end of the year. Question number 8 is your newest fictional crush. I have to go with Li Wei from Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I'm just going to be talking about this book so much. He is the sweetest guy ever. He is constantly just trying to do what is right for Xinyan, and I absolutely adore him. You know, a lot of people are going on and on about morally gray characters, and I'm like, I just want my golden retriever boys, and he's my favorite. I would also say Karis from the Bridge Kingdom series, specifically from The Inadequate Heir. He is also very great. I love how much he pays attention to Zara and how much he sacrifices for her, works for her, to be safe even when she doesn't trust him. I love the Bridge Kingdom and was afraid that the second duology wasn't going to live up to the first duology, but I did think that this second one is going to be just as good. Question 9 is your new favorite characters. I've got a couple of these. Xinyan from Daughter of the Moon Goddess, while we're on the topic. Absolutely adore her. She's such a strong protagonist and is duty bound, but she's also looking to, you know, pursue her own happiness. I can't express my love for her enough. I also think Robin from Babel is fantastic. I love all the different phases that he goes through of first accepting things as they are and then how he questions things and what he thinks is right. Speaking of great character journeys, I loved Shay from The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. This is about a woman who in college was in a sex cult and narrowly escaped, and now when one of her friends who is also in the cult shows up dead, she believes that it has to do with the cult and it may have resurfaced. And I loved following her character and all of the debates that she has in her mind about beauty and power, and just the conversations that happen in this book were fantastic, and I loved seeing it through Shay's perspective. If you have read this book, or if you have a copy of it, I absolutely recommend reading the conversation with the author at the end, because I think it's very eye-opening. I also loved Sam and Sadie from Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. These are two best friends who started a video game company together that became a surprise success. And these two characters, they love each other so much, but they have their differences that they cannot push through. And so you see their tumultuous relationship over the years as they are trying to love each other and do what is best for themselves. And it is just such a heartbreaking struggle. And I also loved Tress from Tress and the Emerald Sea, and honestly all of the characters in this. This is a standalone in the Cosmere and the first in the year of Sanderson. This is inspired by The Princess Bride, and Tress is not your average main character, as the narrative will remind you again and again. She actually thinks through things, she has a good relationship with her parents, and I just loved how caring she is and thoughtful. This was such a pleasant book. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. I don't believe I actually cried in any books this year. It's hard for me to do given the medication that I take, but a couple that got me very close. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Again, the relationship between these two is so emotional, but also there is an event that you are subtly leading up to throughout the book that is so tragic and real life. And I had to put the book down because it was just so sad. Then Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is a memoir about the Stanford assault case, and this is Chanel's account from the night of the assault to all of the court dates and everything that she had. And this is fantastically written, but it is so traumatic. What she went through was so awful, and reading about it was harrowing. Our Missing Hearts also made me really emotional. This is a dystopian about Asian influences in America being banned in this fascist state where the government is cracking down on people who disagree with the government and books and stuff like that. So this is very relevant to today's American politics. And the things that the families in this book go through are heartbreaking. And again, this is one of those books that I had to keep putting down because I was so mad and sad about how this stuff is reality in some cases. On the other hand, question 11 is what books made you happy this year? First off, Tress of the Emerald Sea is just a lovely fantasy walk in the park. I absolutely loved all of these characters following the magical world. I don't think I described what this is about before, but this is about Tress, who lives in this magical world where the oceans are made out of spores that are fluidized by vents underneath. So learning more about these deadly spores that can kill you just by breathing them in, and how the oceans and everything worked and how that changed the world was so fascinating, on top of having hilarious characters who are on very sweet journeys. This is like general fantasy, so it can be enjoyed by younger readers or by older readers, so I thought that this was just so fun, and if I didn't know if it was based on The Princess Bride, I could have guessed. Red, White, and Royal Blue also made me pretty happy. This is a rom-com that everyone and their mom has read about one of the first sons of the United States and one of the princes of England falling in love. And this is sort of an answer to a lot of America's political situations, where it's a more hopeful take if the world was a little bit more open and welcoming to queer people and women and minorities. Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon also made me very happy. This is a rom-com about a weather girl and a sports reporter at the same newspaper who are trying to get their bosses, who both work at the newspaper, who are divorced, back together because their fighting is causing the work environment to be toxic. And their relationship was so sweet. I loved the two of them together and their dynamic so much. And two books that I think are basically like therapy in books: Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is a sci-fi novella about a monk and a robot learning more about each other. And Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. This is about a woman who is put in charge of children who, when they get too emotional, they spontaneously combust. These next two questions are sometimes included in the tag, but number 12 is, what is your favorite book adaptation you've watched this year? And I've only really watched one, because Queen Charlotte does not count, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six. I am obsessed with the show. I have not stopped listening to the album. I keep talking about the show, and it is my everything and has deepened my love for the book even more. Question 13, what is your favorite post that you've done in this year? When it comes to an Instagram post, speaking of Daisy Jones, it is my breakdown of Daisy Jones page to screen. I spent so much time nitpicking the show and the book against each other and formatting this, and I was very proud of my graphic design as well. When it comes to YouTube, I loved my lowest rated and highest rated series, where I read the lowest and highest rated Goodreads books on my TBR. And you know, it had mixed results, but I read some surprise favorites. Question number 14 is the most beautiful book that you bought, and that is by far this copy of Tress and the Emerald Sea. I am getting the Year of Sanderson boxes, so this is a leather-bound copy. All of this is embossed in it, cute little M pages, and there are one-color illustrations that happen throughout the book that I think really added to the experience. This was absolutely so worth the money, even if it was just for this one book alone. And the last question, question number 15, is, what does the end of year TBR look like for you? First off, I have a couple of reading events that I'm going to be taking part in. First off is Friendathon, which is a readathon that I have hosted for the last 2 years. It is coming back, likely in July, and so I need to get a move on actually starting that happening. That is a readathon based on reading your friends' taste in books. And in, I believe, September, if Bookopalathon happens again, I will be taking part in that. I love doing that every year. That is making a Monopoly board and basing your monthly reading off of that. And also on Instagram, there is the Summer of Series, which is a challenge that I'm probably going to somewhat do. This is trying to cross off as many series on your list as possible. But when it comes to books that I know I'm going to be reading, I have Miracle Creek by Angie Kim out from the library, so probably going to read that, and as well as The Last True Poets of the Sea by Julia Drake. I'm going to be reading this for a vlog soon. I wonder if you can guess what the vlog theme is. Please give me your guesses down below. I want to pick books that I'm going to read but that I'm not going to read in June. I'm going to be reading 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes, which is based on the Iliad. I was given an arc of Mammoths at the Gates by Nia Vo from Tor. This is a book in the Singing Hills cycles about a monk named Chi who's collecting stories throughout the land. I have You Must Not Miss by Katrina Leno. This has been a 5-star prediction for me for years because I've loved one of her other books. But this is about a girl named Magpie who's not really sure what's real and what's not anymore, and this cover is one of my favorite covers of all time. I also really need to read Yerba Buena and just generally more of my book of the month picks. Like, I have The Love Hypothesis here, I have The Paris Apartment, and The Book of Longings. in the Hacienda, I just need to read more of my Book of the Month books, so then I could get more Book of the Month books. Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I also need to read before she comes out with anything new. I don't think she has a 2023 release, but I have loved all of her Evelyn Hugo and Beyond books, and this is her My 12 Books, 12 Friends in 12 Months challenge. And this is about a woman who's a tennis player who retired, but then people have talked shit about her, so she's coming back to take them on. I'm excited. Oh my god, this is not going well for me. And that is all for the mid-year book freakout tag. If you would love to answer all of these questions, I would love to see what your mid-year update looks like. I've been having a pretty solid reading year thus far, and I hope it continues throughout the year. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you would like to follow me anywhere, my link is in the description with all of the things that I do on the bookish internet. And as always, I will see you in the next one.